Okay, the agenda for tonight is a recap on East West Rail, what it's all about. For those that already know, please bear with me. I'm sure there's some people that don't know much about East West Rail as a project. Then go on to routes and rumours. There's a bit of speculation and unsubstantiated information that we've received. William will then talk about recent work that Cambridge Approaches have done, and then we'll open the floor to questions and answers. Okay, East West Rail is a railway that's planned between Oxford and Cambridge and then going eastwards to the ports. It's split into three sections: the western section between Oxford and Bedford, the central section between Bedford and Cambridge, and the eastern section between Cambridge and the ports, the East Coast ports. A little bit of the route is already built, that between Oxford and Bicester. That was completed in 2016. The central section, i.e. between Bedford and Cambridge, there was a public consultation on that in about 2 years ago now, early 2019. And about a year later, East West Rail published a report in which they chose option E corridor. Here's a map that shows, an East West Rail map that shows the route, the option E corridor between Bedford, a station between St Neots and Sandy, onto Cambourne, and then southeastwards to approach Cambridge from the south. And we're concentrating tonight on the section to the east of Toft. So, as I said, option E was selected about a year ago, and there was no, in the consultation, there was no mention, or there was no discussion about a possibility of an approach via Cambridge North. But we'll come on to that later in the presentation. At the moment, East West Rail are preparing routes, alignment routes within the option E area, and on which they're due to consult early next year. So in potentially 7 or 8 weeks' time, but it may be delayed. Construction is expected to start in about 4 years' time, 2025. So what we're doing is quite urgent. I should say that East West Rail is split into two parts. The western and central part are going to be built and operated by East West Rail Company. East West Rail Consortium is responsible for the section between Cambridge and the East Coast. That might sound a bit dry and pedantic, but in actual fact, a lot of projects go wrong at their interfaces, and Cambridge is in the lucky position of being at that interface between those companies. Cambridge Approaches, we were founded about 5 months ago now, with the original intention of helping parish councils identify issues with the East West Rail route. And to do that, we prepared alternative alignments between in the area, the option E area to the east of Toft. We looked at the potential impacts of these alignments and discussed in a series of meetings with representatives from the parish councils. As a result of those meetings, the routes were amended slightly and an additional route was proposed. Comments were received and the representatives voted on the alternatives, which one they thought most beneficial for for the whole area and for their parish. So this is the original option E area bounded in red, and you can see a series of 5 main alternative routes, one to the north with a sub-option, central one, and then 3 to the south with 1 or 2 alternatives. We then heard that after a bit of lobbying on our part and other people's part, that East West Rail were considering a station to the north of Camborne. Originally, they considered a station to the south of Camborne only, but so they considered an option to the north of the 428. This isn't their option; these are our options, just proposals. You can see the one on the right, which is alternative 6 and 6A, is the one that proposed originally, and it goes to the north of the 428, just past Hardwick, and then dives southeastwards towards the rifle range at Barton, and splitting into alternatives, one to avoid the wildlife park, and one to skirt the motorway at the M11. Both end up going through Great Shelford. The conclusion from the series of meetings was that there was no route that was good for the area. No parish escaped the impact from any of the options, apart from South Trumpington. And Great Shelford was severely impacted by all the alternatives. Alternative 6 and 6A had far fewer properties close to the route, though this didn't affect Great Shelford. It still had severe impacts. No properties in Hauxton, Compton and Barton were within 250 metres of alternative 6A. There is a potential alternative to this, and this is one route prepared by CBRR, Cambed Railroad, and they, who are a campaign group, they've been lobbying for about 3 years on this issue, on the alignment of East West Rail, not just a northern approach into Cambridge, but further west as well. But in the area of interest, they proposed a station to the north of Camborne, outside the option E area, which you can see to the south, south of the map there. So their route then followed approximately the 428 for a while before veering northeastwards to Northstowe, so between Bar Hill and Girton, to the north of Hauxton, and then joining the line going north from Cambridge into Cambridge North. You can see as it joins that line near Milton, just to the northeast of Milton, it splits into 2, and I'll go on to the reason for that shortly. You'll also see a chord across Coldham's Common on the centre right of the map. Again, I'll go on to that in a minute. The advantage of approaching Cambridge from the north is, there's various advantages, but one of them in terms of track capacity. At the moment, the track capacity to the south of Cambridge is pretty well full. Probably not 100, well, it's not 100%, but it's approaching it. That to the north is not full. So there's a logical argument for approaching Cambridge from the north. So there's a lot of misconceptions about CBRR's route, and I'd like to put some of them to rest tonight So this would be the route of freight going from the west, the Midlands area maybe, towards the east coast, Felixstowe and other ports. And you can see that it goes through Northstowe, and then as and into and past Cambridge North, and onto the chord, the new chord, across bottom corner of Coldham's Common, and then on the existing track to the east coast via Newmarket. There are other alternatives to this, I should say, that don't even go into Cambridge City. That they are more expensive, but the long-term benefits are probably greater. Direct trains going north from the Midlands area, or Oxford, Bedford, etc., going to Ely, King's Lynn, Norwich, etc. You can see the route there highlighted. Just go through Northstowe and then northerly to join the existing line. A lot of criticism has been levelled at the route, saying it can't go to the biomedical campus. It can easily go to the biomedical campus through Cambridge North, Cambridge Central, Cambridge South. Probably a couple of minutes between each station. And the next slide shows it carrying on to Stansted along the Liverpool Street line. Now we're coming on to the rumours and speculation part of it. And the first one was relating to whether a section of the track between Hauxton and Great Shelford needed to be four-tracked, i.e. doubled up in capacity. That shows the black dotted line, broken line, shows the area that I'm talking about. We proposed an alternative 4, that follows that line, but we had shown it as being 4-track. So in our proposal, there would be work required for bridges, widening bridges, as it goes over various B roads, the motorway, the river, and under the Shelford Road, the 1301, towards Shepworth Junction. We'd heard from a Great Shelford resident that Anthony Brown had been told that East West Rail were not considering to 4-track this section of the line. And we checked with Anthony Brown's office, and they confirmed that they had a statement from East West Rail that said, if East West Rail uses the Cambridge line, Shepworth branch from King's Cross, to approach Cambridge, our current assumption is that we wouldn't require to 4-track the line. The design in this area is still underway. This is a very tempting proposition to East West Rail. It would allow the reuse of approximately 4 kilometres of existing line. The survey requests, which are plotted here, you can see that there's a pattern here, which is the south, towards the south of the option E area, and then there's one in Hauxton, probably more now. There's one in Hauxton. So that will be consistent with that statement from them. This shows the extent of the temptation to East West Rail. They would save 2 kilometres from the shortest alternative. They would save 4 kilometres from the previous option 4 of new track, but 2 from the shortest alternative in option E area. They wouldn't have to build a bridge over the, or modify the bridge over the motorway, the M11, and they wouldn't have to modify the bridge over the CAM either. So this table is proxy for construction cost. I personally doubt if they would be allowed to get away with it, because as we know, both the King's Cross line is pretty full, certainly at peak times, and to expect to run 4 trains an hour on the same length of track, I think is pushing it. So I'm deeply sceptical of whether they'd be allowed to not 4-track it if that's the option they took. But we'll see. Okay, this is the second item of rumour and speculation, if you like. We'd heard from a couple of South Cambs district councillors that East West Rail had told them that they were indeed considering a station in North Cambourne, as well as one in South. There's different options. The one from North, they said, would skirt the new Bourne airfield housing development, which you see here as a proposal. And the broken line is my interpretation of a line running to the north of the 428, excuse me, going to the east of the development and then going south-southeast towards the option E area. Next slide, please. And here you can see it as a smaller scale map. So from the Bourne airfield area, alternative 7 would perhaps go join the option E area somewhere between Toft and Comberton. Again, I've got to emphasise this is my interpretation. And then it could split to either a northerly alternative or some of the southerly alternatives that we've previously considered. Next slide, please.
David, I just wonder if it's worth adding at this point that there was the survey engineer that was interviewed, I think near Highfields Caldecott, that said that he had to get to Barrington Hill. So that was kind of some, I would say, an independent source of information about where the route was going in his mind.
Yeah.
You know, it's all kind of hearsay, but
yeah.
Barrington Hill, of course, is
right at the beginning of the, throughout the consultation with East West Rail, they have maintained that we shouldn't place any emphasis on the fact that there's a pattern to the survey request locations, and they were surveying throughout the whole area. But to be honest, I don't believe them. Some of the comments made by the parish councillors' representatives before, in summary, were that there was no benefit of the railway to the option E area. In particular, the major concerns were the proximity to the housing, the extent of the noise, and potential air pollution, because the railway probably will use diesel trains, certainly in the first instance. There's a contract being being tendered for at the moment for second-hand diesel trains for East West Rail. Also concerned about potential of cutting of roads and other public rights of way. That was a major concern. Cutting off communities, shops, schools, surgeries, etc. The impact on the environment and farmland, and the balancing of that against the impact on the villages. There was a split between some of the parishes where the environment was affected more than the villages. So there's discussion on that aspect. In terms of the radio telescopes, MRAO, there was some desire among participants to move the active telescopes to a less sensitive part of the site, freeing up possibility of other routes across the area. So this is a blob of the Hauxton Great Shelford area where there's potential for routes to pass through. You can see on the left-hand side the river snaking its way towards Little Shelford. So there's a floodplain there. The pale yellow areas are scheduled monuments. And yes, nationally significant infrastructure projects can pass through these, but only if there's really no other viable alternative. So it's difficult to find a route that would join the curve of the King's Cross line south of Shelfords Junction. So there's the capacity issue that we've spoken about before, that there's also the route issue. As I say, it's difficult to find a route that doesn't impact on either the floodplain or the scheduled monuments to join the curve south of Shelfords Junction. There might be a possibility, yeah, you could tunnel it, very, very expensive in an area of very high water table. And yes, you could even have a two-tier railway section following the line of that curve. Again, exceptionally expensive and most unlikely. The other alternative, as I've previously drawn on different sketch, is one that goes across the motorway. Crosses the motorway, then the A1301 to join the West Anglia Main Line route, just where William's shown. So are there alternatives? But I don't think there's a viable alternative to the one that I've shown, but we'll wait and see next at the public consultation. Okay, I'll now pass over to William, who will talk about the activities of Cambridge Approaches.
Good evening, everybody. My name's William Harold. I think we'll just say that David Revel, who's just been speaking, is a civil engineer who has spent 15 years working with railways. So he does have some insights into what sort of designs and what sort of routes might be representative of what East West Rail are thinking. Yeah, I also want to talk about some other aspects of this project. So firstly, why does the East West Rail? Why do an East West Rail? Our understanding is that it's been talked about since 1995. We talked to Edward Lee of Smarter Transport in Cambridge, who told us that initially it was intended as a freight line. More recently, with the Oxford to Cambridge arc, the idea has been to have fast transport between Oxford and Cambridge to try and build the economy of the Oxford to Milton Keynes and Milton Keynes to Cambridge arc. Quite actually, who will use the line? We haven't really seen that from East West Rail Company. I mean, maybe it's scientists that live in Cambridge but want to commute to Oxford. We don't really know. One of the early reports done by some consultants called Atkins in 2014 actually flagged that there was currently very low demand for traffic between Oxford and Cambridge, but they hoped that if they built the railway, then maybe it would increase, which I'm sure is true. But I'm not sure that's a great business case for spending all this money, but that's what's been said. More recently still, there's been a justification added, which that is that the East West Railway will support housing development along the line. So in Cambridge, one of the foundational reports of the Oxford-Cambridge Arc, which is called the NIC report, talks about land value increases in the area. So if you have agricultural land, it's they say it's £25,000 per hectare. If you have planning permission for that land, then it becomes worth £5 million per hectare. And so there could be a development corporation that captures some or all of that value and passes it back to central government, who would be funding this railway. So the question that I would ask about that is, yeah, that makes sense, and I'm sure it could support development of land around stations. Are there other ways of doing that? Would a guided bus or a metro solution be cheaper per mile? So open question. So we don't fully understand the business case for the East West Railway as it stands. Furthermore, what they quote as the benefit to cost ratio of the selected option E is currently 0.63. So that means that the costs are bigger than the benefits in terms of their quoted business plan. So another thing that David touched on was the wider picture. So what's currently being consulted on is the central section from Bedford to Cambridge, which is a new line, but the western section and the eastern section are also in play. And so we have the East West Rail Company, who, as David said, have a mandate to build the central section and operate a passenger service. If you look at their consultation from the beginning of 2019, there's no mention of freight. Subsequent questioning of them says that it will be freight capable, but they're playing down freight, and I think indeed freight is a bit of an irritation to the East West Rail Company. If you look at the East West Rail Consortium, which, as David said, is focused on the eastern section and developing a strategic outline business case. I should say the East West Rail Consortium actually does concern itself with the whole of the East West Railway, but it has this activity in the eastern section at the moment. So they did an invitation to tender for this business case development, and I quote from that tender. It says, "The East West Rail presents a huge opportunity to become a secondary freight route, enabling more services to bypass congested London routes. We hear the Mayor of London doesn't want to have freight going through the North London line down here. Rather, it went somewhere else. So other congested routes currently used between the ports on the East Coast and the Midlands and the North. So you can see here on the map Felixstowe Docks. It's the largest container port in the country. It handles 40% of the container traffic coming into the UK. There are capacity problems on the Ely line here. And as we described, also desire to have less freight going through North London. So you can see that the East-West Rail route could be a great opportunity for freight trains. You can also understand, because of the structure of the organisations, why we haven't been consulted on freight traffic, but because because they're really concerned just about the central section and the passenger traffic at the moment. But that doesn't mean to say we're not going to have freight traffic. I do have for those of you that haven't lived next to freight lines, I have a video here that gives you a feeling for what they're like. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I did this last time and the audio didn't work, so just bear with me. But if it doesn't work, you can see it on our website, cambridgeapproaches.org, under links. So let's see if that works. So that's obviously a normal train. And here comes a freight train. Okay, so it goes on and on, but you can see the track is quite elevated. So if the railway goes through the floodplains near Hauxton and the Shelfords, then it might have to be on some sort of viaduct to be raised. Or if it has to cross roads, then you need to have some clearance. This sort of view may not be unrepresentative of what we might see in the area that David's been talking about. Let me see if I can get back to the presentation. Here we go. So different topic now. I'm talking about why we in Cambridge Approaches think that a station to the north of Cambourne would be a good thing. We're a group of residents in the Option E area, so kind of the initial look at this is actually I don't really want a railway in my backyard, but of course that sort of argument, while it's kind of good for getting people engaged with the problem, it doesn't actually serve as an argument for influencing the route, because if you just say you don't want it, then of course you're inflicting it on somebody else. So it's better to think about arguments which actually produce a better solution for the railway. So one of the things that is talked about is by South Cambs District Council is preserving the character of the villages in South Cambridgeshire. So they want to preserve that character. And so of course, driving through open countryside and close to villages changes the character of them. Another point which we'll talk about in a bit more detail is that if you have the railway north of Cambourne, that is likely to support the development of Cambourne as a town better. This is the opinion of people in Cambourne in the town council, also the planners in South Cambs District Council that we've spoken to. One of the other opportunities pointed out by Cambed Railroad is so-called multimodal corridors. So if you can have a railway that runs alongside a dual carriageway, then it reduces the planning blight and noise compared to having a railway and a road separated. The other thing you can do is to have a so-called transport hub, multimodal transport hub, where people can change between road and rail, or between road and rail and metro or guided bus. And this makes it easier to use the system. I'm just going to admit another couple of people here. So another thing that's been talked about is the preservation of farmland. So Option E is it's quite a lot of farmland. If the railway line cuts across farmland, it tends to make the fields too small to get large machinery on. We've talked to the chairman of the local NFU about this. And although the actual area consumed by the railway itself is quite small, the impact on usable farmland is bigger than you might expect because of this cutting up factor. Again, a multimodal approach would reduce the impact. The other thing is that you get vermin on the line, and the farmers can't get on the line to control them. We're thinking about rabbits, and they can reduce the crop yields by up to 80% either side of the line. About 50% of the wheat production in the UK is within 50 miles of here. And we're talking to the people at the Campaign for the Preservation of Rural England. They're talking about climate change and sea level rising, and the risk that the best farmland in the country at the moment, which is in the Fenlands to the north of Cambridge, actually by 2100 will be flooded. So that's well in the lifetime of this railway. So that would make the farmland here to the south of Cambridge even more precious, and it's just unnecessary to lose it. A few more reasons on later slides. This approach of a Camborne North station was supported by the so-called Cambridge Approaches Oversight Group, which is this group of 12 parish councils that we've got together. It's been publicly supported by Anthony Brown, our local MP, did a press release about it. Also, we met Mayor James Palmer. He told us verbally that he supported that. Members of South Cambs District Council support it. And the CDRR group that we talked about before implicitly support it with their route, but they're also talking about North Cambridge approach. So a lot of support, and we expect from talking to East West Rail Company, they will probably have an option to the north of Camborne, at least one. They haven't committed because they don't want to commit to what they're going to put in the next consultation before the minister signs it off, I guess. So here's a kind of graphical thing. This is taken from the Greater Cambridge Planning Portal recently. So you can see here's Camborne, quite small. Here's in red here are the sites that have been put forward for development. And so you can see a lot of potential sites to the north of Camborne and some to the south as well. This is a kind of non-residential use, so I guess that's kind of industrial. So the centre of gravity of Camborne with this sort of plan will probably be north of Camborne compared to where it is now. So I've got a kind of diagrammatic version of that on the next slide. So you can see here this is the existing, this blue rectangle is the existing Camborne, that's 4,300 homes. We understand that South Cambs District Council have to build another 50,000 homes. There's 31,000 in the current local plan, and there would be there's a range of the number of houses for East West Rail, but the middle of that range is about 19,000, so that would be 50,000 homes. So they need to build a lot of houses, and a lot of them could go north according to the emerging local plan of Camborne. So if you have that, Papworth, Everard would be surrounded, and what South Cambs are telling us is perhaps a better place for this station would be in this position B, where it's kind of northeast of the Caxton Gibbet junction, and that would be that could be a multimodal travel hub. So you could have the A428 expressway, you could have the East West Rail, and you could have things like the guided bus and then the metro. What we hear East West Rail are kind of informally proposing with their option E is a station northeast of Caxton, and then of course the route would head down towards the area that David's been talking about. Whereas with option A, we would have thought that a multimodal corridor heading towards Cambridge and either going to the north or to the south along the M11, according to our alternative 6, would be better and use multimodal corridors. So that's the debate around the site, around the site of the Camborne station. So changing subject completely, and now moving to an environmental problem with the option E area. Angela in our team has done quite a bit of research, I should say Pippa as well, with the Cambridgeshire bat group. So there is a rare species of bat in our area that they roost in the Belts area behind Wimpole. So that is here. And there's a maternity roost there. These are a protected species, and there's a so-called SAC, or Special Area of Conservation, that protects these bats. It protects the roosts, but it also protects the I would say the area around the SAC, so 5 to 7 kilometers around it, because the bats need to forage for food. They feed on moths, and they have to kind of fly out to various woods around to find these moths. And Natural England police this special area of conservation, and it's governed by something called the Habitats Directive. So what these lines are is there were some radio transmitters connected to the bats in the early 2000s, and they tracked where they fly, and so you can see that from this roost, I think there's also a roost in the Evanston Woods. They go all the way around up through Comberton. Apparently there's some woods near Granchester that they forage in. They're all around the Everstons and Hauxton, and they could well be further over here, but I think that Chris Vines, who did the survey, said that they didn't actually survey this area. So more information about this on the Cambridge Approaches website, but the legal aspect of this and the sort of statements are East West Rail's policy is to be, that's actually a very good policy in writing on environmental considerations. That they say they develop route options with environmental considerations at the forefront. So what you have to consider is that in the last consultation, they put through 5 options, but in terms of the approach to Cambridge, there were only really 2 options. One of them was just to the north of the Wimpole Sack and affected the bats, and the other one was just to the south of the Wimpole Sack, and that also would have affected the bats. So they didn't actually produce an option that didn't affect probably the most sensitive environmental or wildlife issue in the area. So I'm sure that wasn't intentional on their part, but that's kind of what happened. So just looking at the Habitats Directive, this is a European directive, but it's been adopted by UK law for a while. And there's some text there you can read, but what it effectively says is you really should look at other alternatives before you adversely impact the protected areas. So we know that East West Rail are doing some surveys at the moment. David mentioned that. They are looking for bats. There's a contract which I think is running over the winter, but I think they also tried to start during the summer to try and find out where these bats are. In terms of getting visibility of the surveys, we asked through an FOI request, can we see where you're surveying, what you're surveying for, and any reports so far. So we were denied on that FOI request and told that it wasn't in the public interest to know what the reports are. So the other thing is that if you receive a survey request and you have the survey done and then you ask for your own survey report, then so far we've not been in touch with anybody that's actually managed to receive their own survey report. So bear in mind that we're actually paying for these surveys. So I don't know why they're so secret, but anyway, that's the current situation. So it leads to the question of if you receive a survey request, so I've received a survey request, we know lots of people that have, what should you say? Should you say yes? Should you say no? I mean, the thinking is, if you are not in favour of the railway going through your back garden, your initial thought might be that you don't really want to cooperate, and therefore you say no. If you are thinking that they might find some ecological information that would help guide them to the best route, then you might think, well, actually, maybe the best thing to do is say yes, because you've got to let them find these things. But bear in mind that the ecologist that we've had that had her back garden survey didn't think much of the quality of the survey. She said it was a bit of a tick box exercise. And you don't get to see the survey reports, and so there will be some interpretation done by the East West Rail Company before we see their kind of summary result. So it's not an entirely satisfactory position. So maybe there's an opportunity for some collective bargaining here. So if a group of people get together that have received survey reports, maybe they could demand transparency. Maybe they could make sure that the surveys were limited to environmental rather than helping them design the railway. Some farmers have talked to their land agents, so people like Savills and Bidwells. Generally, we hear that the land agents have been advising them to say no. What may happen as time goes on is that the East West Rail Company will start to mandate these surveys, but we'll see. So anyway, but no definitive conclusion, but those are kind of the considerations that we've had. Moving on, we have asked the East West Rail Company a number of questions and trying to get written answers to them. Sometimes the verbal answers are a little bit different from the written answers, the so-called substantive answers, according to East West Rail. So there was a lot of concern about, expressed by the parishes or the parish councillors about if the railway crosses a road or a right of way, given the policy, new policy to not do level crossings anymore, then what is the policy from East West Rail on restoring rights of way? So verbally, what's been said was that unless it was practically impossible, then rights of way and roads would be restored. What's come back in the substantive response in writing was that it would be decided on an individual basis. So actually no guarantee. So if you want to see the actual response, it's on our website. Next question was, will you consult on a route alignment to the north of Cambourne? They've said maybe, and we're looking at it. And I can understand that answer, because until they get their next consultation signed off, they probably don't want to commit. Will the central section be freight capable? And then we've got a definitive yes on that. Even though they're not operating freight services, as we explained earlier, that doesn't mean to say that freight operators won't be operating freight trains. Can you rule out freight trains running at night? So the reason we asked that question was that East West Rail said that there was a compatibility problem between slow freight trains, 750 meters long, by the way, these freight trains, and fast passenger trains. So they just go at different speeds, so they don't interact very well. No passenger services at night, so great time to run freight would be at night. So they've said, we're still studying that, which is what they normally say when we ask them difficult questions. East West Rail Company have expressed concerns about running alongside the A428. So this is the multimodal corridor. So we asked them whether that was a blocker. They've said not necessarily. So I guess that's encouraging. So we know that East West Rail Company is not going to operate the freight trains unless they have a change of mandate from the government. So we asked them, well, who is going to operate these freight trains? And they said, well, it's the rail freight operators. It's the same people that run them today. And I think there's several companies. So they would be licensed to run these services on these tracks. So another question is, with these sort of projects, you often get a strategic environmental assessment early on. So we asked, has that been performed? If so, can we see it? And the answer was no, it's not been performed and it's not needed. They didn't expand on quite why that is. Might be because it's a nationally significant infrastructure project. I think they will do some environmental assessments. I mean, clearly they're doing a lot of surveys. But they haven't done an SEA anyway. Another line of questioning has been around the business case that's been presented. So we've questioned them about the costs. We're going to question them about the benefits. So far on the costs, the main thing is that between the last time the public were consulted in January 2019 and the time when the option E decision was made in January 2020, the cost of the best route went up from, this total cost went up from 1.9 billion to 5.6 billion. So basically a factor of 3. Not much explanation of why that was. And the cost of the option E area, which was selected, went up by a lot less than the cost of the other options. And that was one of the reasons why option E was selected. So we've asked for some explanation. Just in the last few days, they've said they're not going to explain that, but some of our questions will be addressed in the next consultation. So I guess we'll see, but it's frustrating that they're not answering these important questions about what happened in the option E decision. So Cambridge Approach is a group of concerned residents, actually quite a few of us now. What are our current objectives? We are calling for a review of the East-West Rail approaches to Cambridge. We want to see a fair review of routes that go into Cambridge North as well as to the south. We're actually not the first people to call for this. Cambed Railroad started a petition on that a while back, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We're also calling for more joined up thinking on the East-West Railway. We've seen a lot of disconnects in the thinking. So one that I think we mentioned is between the railway line and the local housing plan. So they just don't seem to be joined up. South Cambs District Council called for some integrated thinking between them and East-West Railway 2 years ago in their consultation response. We spoke to South Cambs last week. They said, nothing much has actually moved on. In fact, we spoke to them about who was responsible for the local plan of housing for the around the East-West Rail. They weren't sure. It was either them or it was maybe a development corporation, and the group there hadn't formed yet, or maybe it was a group in the Oxford-Cambridge arc. What was very clear was that, according to current plans, the East-West Railway line route will be fixed before the housing plan. So, how can they be coordinated? We talked about the eastern section being designed separately from the central section, and there's this kind of point of interface at Cambridge. So the business plan for the eastern section, I think there's an interim version of that coming out at the end of the year, final version in April. So, again, the central section is going to be done and dusted by the time that comes out. We haven't seen a credible explanation for what sort of passengers are actually going to use this. We've seen some numbers in terms of what they think the benefits are going to be, but like what types of user, not clear. David mentioned the capacity of existing railways to the south, and have they included the impact on the line up to Shelfords Branch Junction, and also the line all the way into Cambridge, which might need to be made up to 4-track. Not seen that so far. More issues. No discussion of the impact on night freight services. So, most of the people affected here are actually going to be in Cambridge itself if these freight trains run through Cambridge. I don't think those people are aware of this yet. Costs have risen, and we talked about that, should trigger a bit of a review. No sign of that so far. Environmental impact, Barbastell Bats, the Radio Telescopes Observatory, nationally important site. Residential amenity of many of the residents, including people listening tonight. The precious farmland we've talked about. No written commitment to restore roads and rights of way. No consideration of better options, multimodal corridors, putting the railway closer to where local users might benefit more. No assessment of the overlap between the business case for this railway and that of local transport schemes like the guided bus or the metro. There's not a lot of sign of dialogue between East West Rail Company and, for example, the Combined Authority and the Mayor's Office. So lots and lots of disconnects, and we want more joined up thinking, I think, around East West Rail. So coming towards the end now, as a resident of the area, what can you do if you're concerned about the situation? Well, you can write to the East West Rail Company. There's some email addresses on our website. You can write to local politicians. People in the area have been sponsoring some of these signs. Some other parts have been producing their own. So this is some gentle advice to East West Rail about where the railway shouldn't go. So there's several villages starting to put those up. You can stay up to date with our research of the subject on cambridgeapproaches.org. So when we produce a new blog, then you can see that. I think we've just recently put in something about the bats and Camborne North. If you want to get involved, then do email us, or if you want to form your own group.
It would miss the meeting.
We would encourage that. So our email address is here. So there's a petition to call for a fair assessment of approaches to Cambridge from the north and the south. So this is the declaration. If you want to sign that petition, that would be, we would appreciate that. We think that would be a good thing. And to find it, you just Google CBRR and petition, or you can see the links on our website. But that's what it says. We're calling on the Department of Transport to ensure that the proposal for a northern route for the central section of the East West Rail, such as that proposed by Camvet Railroad, with widespread support of residents of South Cambridgeshire, is fairly evaluated. At the same time, and to the same degree, can we go on mute, please? As alternative routes proposed by the East West Rail Company. That's all I had to say. So, David, do you want to take it from there on the Q&A?
Yeah, it's Nick Denton here from Shelford Rugby Club. Quite frankly, hang on a second, let me start video. Quite frankly, I'm astounded that this is the first I'm hearing of this. We've had no requests for surveys, even though on the EWR website it clearly states that landowners will be contacted, and yet nearly all of the options or recommended options tend to come through the middle of the rugby club. I'm trying to stay calm because I'm enraged. It's the first I'm hearing of this. And I can't believe that we've had parish councils, South Cambridgeshire involved, and yet we're not been informed at all. It's amazing. You know, where do we get a say in what's going on here?
Okay, thanks for the question. I should preface it, my answer with, these are what I personally think are possible routes. There are some other routes, there's plenty of other routes, and I think they're unlikely, but that's my personal opinion. I'm not recommending any of the routes, okay? I just want to make that clear. It's not a recommendation for any of the routes. We've looked at the routes, the impacts of each of the routes in terms of distance from residential properties. We looked at it from other aspects as well. impact on environment. So all we're saying is that these are possible routes. I certainly appreciate the anger that people feel that a railway line is going through possibly or very close to their property. Yeah, I'm in that position as well. But all we can do is argue with East West Rail and see if we can change their mind, as Cambridge Approaches is doing.
So just so as I understand then.
Yep.
So I've calmed down a bit now. So just so as I understand then, when one of these civil projects goes ahead, you don't get a say on whether, you obviously can't say no if that's what's been selected and the government approves.
There is you don't have your window of opportunity for opposing the scheme in a particular area is fast running out.
I haven't been told. This is the first I'm hearing it. I mean, time's running out, but I only now find out something that's going to have tacit approval next year by the sounds of it.
Okay, I guess not many people would have heard at all if it hadn't been publicised in the area by Cambridge Approaches and other people as well. So and we would have had probably about, I would guess, about a month between the public consultation, which I don't know how well that is going to be publicised, public consultation and closure of comments that we can make. So that in the public consultation, they'll put forward different alignments, both in the Option E area and we understand from North Cambourne, and we'll be asked to comment on those. What we are trying to do, as we said, we're trying to get East West Rail to consider an approach, other approaches into Cambridge. And I showed you a northern approach from Cambed Railroad. That's just one. There are other alternatives. The public was not given the opportunity to decide on whether a northern approach or a southern approach was better. So your anger is shared by a lot of people. I've got to say that.
Yeah, it feels more like a fait accompli. Sorry, Tracy. It sounds more like a fait accompli than a consultation, quite frankly. But go on, I'll let Tracy ask her question.
Yeah, I agree.
Hi there, this is Tracy and Pete Brown. Nick, I share your anger. Pete and I live very near to the rugby club, actually on the side of the road of Scottsdale's, which is another possibility for the CHOP. And I just wanted to say, I'm not angry with Cambridge Approaches. I understand, a number of you live in Haslingfield, and that's important for people to know because you're affected by this as well. I'm not angry with you because you're the ones that brought it to my attention. This early 2019 consultation, I keep an eye on these things. I never heard anything about it. Turns out it was advertised in, I think, one Cambridge newspaper. There was a Cambridge gathering. There wasn't anything around. There wasn't anything really in South Cambridgeshire to speak of in terms of talking to people. So we have not been informed. I'm really grateful to you guys for publicizing this, but I'm also scared of what you guys are doing because by putting in your possible routes, it plows right through my house. And if there are alternatives, I don't want East West Rail to think that we've all gotten together and agreed these are the alternatives. This is why I see Malcolm, the chair of the Shelford Council, is on the call right now. And if he has been on most of these meetings, I'd really like to know which one of those options he voted for, if any. And I'm a bit frustrated because I also keep an eye on the parish council minutes of meetings. And until the last, I don't know, maybe month or so, maybe a little bit more than that, there's not been any mention of East-West Rail. So I'm just curious as to what our council's position has been on this. It'd be great to know that. And hopefully the position is that they were one of the councils that kind of had a minority vote, but in fact, they're pulling for us on this. I think there are a lot of us that can get together and hopefully make a difference. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Can I?
David, do you want me to say something?
Sure, yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tracy. I think from our point of view, the issue we face as the parish council is that whichever route you took, we were going to be absolutely hammered. And when we discussed, although at the time when we initially discussed it, we weren't aware of all the issues that have subsequently come out, like the fact that they're not going to have to necessarily dual the King's Cross line. Because when we originally told that they would have to have 4 tracks on the King's Cross line, that would have meant that we would have had to virtually destroy the whole of Davy Close, most of Bridge Close, and and you'd have all sorts of problems on the A1301 Cambridge Road with when the bridge was going to be rebuilt. So, as far as we were concerned as a parish council, there was no easy route for us to choose. Everything flattened something in our village. And
so how come none of this was ever mentioned in any of the notes? How come none of this was ever mentioned in any of the minutes? Why is it only now we're hearing about something so impactful, not just on my house or on Scottsdale's or on the rugby club or on Cambridge Road or splitting the village? It impacts so many people. Why is it only now we're hearing about it?
We've had stuff up on the website for the last couple of months.
Yeah, but the consultation was 2 years ago, and Cambridge Approaches had meetings more than a couple of months ago.
Yeah, sure, and we've been party to those meetings, but ultimately the public consultation, we weren't involved in that. That wasn't our consultation. That was East-West Rail's.
Malcolm, were you informed about the consultation last year? Did East-West Rail write to you?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And so therefore you didn't respond to it?
No.
No. Okay, because I think.
Okay, so
I mean, let's be frank about this. There might be a possibility that they found a route that doesn't impact Great Shelford. I personally can't find it, but
yeah,
if they do, absolutely great Shelford.
Malcolm, which of those options that have been published by Cambridge Approaches has the council supported the most? What was your favorite option?
Well, the favorite option that does the least damage to us is the route that comes in through South, round by Little Shelford. But that Tracy is in terms of the impact on property. What it would do if it came in that way, if you've got 4 extra trains an hour, would mean that the level crossings at Hinton Way and Granham's Road would be down probably for 45 minutes, if not 50 minutes in every hour.
Yeah.
So you're then going to split the village in half. So whichever route you took, whether it was numbers 1 through to 7, all impact in some disastrous way on our village.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate that. It's good to know which way the council was at least which way they voted, just because we hadn't heard that until now. And I agree with you. There's no good option through Shelford. There just isn't. There isn't.
That's one of the reasons why we want to shake the dice again and get them to justify why come into Cambridge South rather than Cambridge North, because there were a lot of good arguments for coming into Cambridge North, and they were dismissed by East-West Rail Company in the consultation response in January this year for not really very good reasons. And the selection of Cambridge South versus Cambridge North initially was done by National Rail without any consultation at all. So, and as I tried to point out, there's the alignment with the housing plan. That there's a lot more developments happening to the north of Cambridge. The business about trains not being able to turn round with the northern approach is not true. So, you know, that's one of the reasons that we've come to the conclusion that we ought to be petitioning for that decision to be reviewed, and that's why I flagged the petition. And it's really a call for some more joined up thinking, and there's some very fundamental things that have not been sorted out here, and we need to hold East West Rail to account. This is a democracy.
Can I ask a
William,
question?
could I go back to
David, sorry.
one of the slides? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, sorry. One of the things I'm struggling with, and it probably echoes something Tracy said and also Nick has said, is that, you know, this is hugely impactful. And, you know, obviously East West Rail have decided that option E is their preferred, and that's the way they're going to go. Okay. What's the time frame between when they decided that and Malcolm and the parish council sharing something with the local residents? Because the first thing I knew about this was a little, you know, postcard through the letterbox, and it just the communication doesn't feel like it's come through to the local residents in a decent time frame. So Malcolm, sorry, that's probably more aimed at you.
No, that's fine. I mean, the difficulty we've got, Mark, is that what we're talking about at the moment is something hypothetical. We don't know the route.
Yeah, so my question, Malcolm, sorry, my question is, when did EWR decide option E was their option, and then a card come through the door? What's that time frame? And the card,
I think they decided in January, February this year.
They did, yes. In a report in January that they selected option E after taking about a year.
Okay, so
but I don't think we as a parish council were ever actually were. I think it was just assumed that you would pick it up somehow, that the route was going to be in your area. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, William, but
yeah, I mean, it was only alerted to the fact that they were serious about coming in our own area in July of this year. So that's a part of this year. And that's when we got together and publicised it throughout as far as we could. And we were limited in what we were doing, but publicised it throughout the option E area.
Well, the trigger was a survey request, wasn't it, to
yes.
the local residents? I mean, after you receive a survey request for a railway, it really wakes you up. And that was the stimulus for us to kind of publicise this and just try and get as many people aware of it as possible. And David was of the view that we shouldn't just be thinking about, you know, the local residents. We should be spreading it out to, you know, 12 parishes, which was what we thought we could handle. And a lot of what we've done has been, you know, putting out leaflets. I think we distributed 5,000 leaflets. We've got a website. We're doing webinars, and we're really trying to get some principles applied and that make this a better route. As we've tried to explain, we've realised that in revealing to people what the possibilities are, then you get one lot of NIMBYs fighting another lot of NIMBYs, and it all gets quite destructive. So we've kind of backed away from that. But I think it has generated more understanding of what's about to unfurl.
I think the thing that's a little bit disconcerting is that I totally understand you lobbying against the route that impacts your house. That's entirely reasonable. But to go and get all the parish councils to choose a different preferred route without consulting the people who you've drawn a line through the house of, to me, feels frankly a bit disingenuous.
So we're not advocating a certain route through the option E area.
But you did score that route, and as I understood it, if I apologise if I've misunderstood, but you asked the parish council to vote on a preferred route. I think that's frankly semantic difference because...
Okay, I understand your point. And at the outset, we thought that there might be a route that okay, it's the worst least option, but we found that all of them in the option E area were unacceptable. That's the end result. Right at the beginning, we thought, okay, there might be something that affected a few residents, and yeah, we'd perhaps
But from the website, can I just chance it a little bit? Because from the website,
we didn't find that.
asked, but respectfully, I think it comes across from the website
Hello?
that you've lobbied on behalf of the region through the media and through to the MPs and others that this is the preferred route from the region, which is totally within your rights to ask for, but to not then consult the people who you're to give them a chance to write a reply and to get presumably to write to East West and say this is the view of the region is the bit that I think is concerning a number of people in Shelford.
Yeah,
the way we presented it was this: the process we went through, which was to consult the parish councils, and we actually had a meeting with East West Rail there, and we presented the results of the discussions. A lot of which was, people are concerned about roads not being restored. People are concerned about having this thing near to their village. They're concerned about it, disrupting the countryside around. And we did have a vote, and we sort of explained what that was.
Did you explain that the people who were impacted by that had not been consulted? Was that clear? No.
No, we didn't.
I understand.
Hands up.
I think that's pretty shocking, to be honest. I mean, I understand why you've done it, and I respect your desire to protect your own house, which is entirely reasonable.
But we're trying.
No. I think, with respect, I think you're leaping ahead. What we tried to do was to look at different options, and the parish council representatives would give us a view on of their thoughts on the option.
You go further than that. You presented analysis of a scoring of them.
So
you hadn't consulted the people who you're writing about.
But we didn't have an opportunity to. So what we tried to do is to have public webinars on the options.
But you didn't contact us to tell us that you were doing this. There was nothing through the door until far beyond the point when you'd done that. Right. We then have publicised it to other people in the street, not the parish council.
Is there a chance of knowing who's the chairman of this meeting, so somebody else can have a?
Yeah, so I'm the chair of the questions and answers section.
Okay. So when you complete his conversation, can you pass it on to somebody else, please? Thank you. If you are like me, I can start, but the gentleman speaking, I think it's Nick, is it?
I'm fine. I've made my point. Thanks.
Okay. I'd like to ask some things. You can think of me as a NIMBY if you like, because my back garden backs onto the rugby club, and I, like the gentleman from the rugby club, had heard nothing about this whatsoever, and of course I'm concerned. And tonight, I think I'm a bit disappointed because this was a meeting for people from Shelford and whatever. We've heard nothing about Shelford from the meeting. And I understand that CA, from what I understand, perhaps are NIMBYs in their own right because they've been protecting the interests of people from Toft and Haslingfield and all the rest. And of course, saying that that there are a good route is when you're at least 250 meters away from some people's houses. That's fine, but it's going to be 10 meters away from my house by the looks of it. So what I'd like to say, be a bit more constructive and say I didn't really get what the business model for this is. Why is it that the freight route has to come into the hospital site and up into Cambridge? There's no infrastructure that can unload or load freight from Cambridge or into Cambridge, whichever way it's going to go in that direction. Surely the freight should be bypassing Cambridge altogether and going at some route, which I can come back to, direct to Felixstowe and back out. I mean, it is pointless putting freight trains through the hospital site and through the middle of the city and out to the north. And from
that, I would totally agree with you.
Okay, from that, I would think that the good route would be a northern route, of course, following probably the A14. And let's be honest, there aren't many properties along the edge of the A14. I don't buy the argument, for instance, that they don't like putting railways next to a road because the roads tend to weave. I mean, that's total nonsense. I mean, the A14 is basically a motorway in all but actual classification. So the freight and the passengers. Now, I've been in the university for over 40 years, and I don't know anybody, and I meet people in my college who are from all disciplines, all from historians to physicists to scientists, whatever. I don't know more than 2 people who commute back and forth to Oxford. And if they do, and at least one of those goes relatively regularly, let's call that 4 times a year, she uses the bus. It's a fantastic service. She sits on the bus and she can have 4 hours to look at her work and do whatever to go to a meeting in Oxford. So I don't buy this argument that there's a huge number of people wanting to come from Oxford to Cambridge and back.
Agreed.
So I would put to you.
Totally agree with you.
I would put you
apart from your first point.
Okay, thank you. And let's talk about agricultural land. I mean, if it's not all right for vermin, for railways to go alongside agricultural land because the vermin will eat some of the crops, it's also not all right that the railway goes past my back garden when I've got small children in my garden and I can't go on there to get rid of the vermin either. So that argument is completely superfluous and should be just thrown out of the window. There's no reason, if you look at the very south of Cambridge, there's a route virtually alongside the M11, right on the edge of the 11, you could put motorways and curve it round somehow. If you really wanted to sort of curve in a long route around the south of Cambridge, up through the middle of Cambridge and back out to the east, it just doesn't make any possible sense to me to put 4 lines of freight traffic going through the middle of Cambridge. I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, you know,
you've got it in one. You hit it.
I have plenty of other points, but I'll stop there for somebody else can put their.
May I add one on the freight, David? It's
yes,
Simon
of course.
Smith here. I mentioned it on the chat, and there's the concern about freight. That one of the big use cases for that is the traffic from Felixstowe Docks to the new Northampton Gateway. Is there any mention of that or any thought about that at all?
I don't know the route to the Northampton Gateway, so I haven't seen that in particular. No.
But that's recently approved, received planning permission, so I'm presuming that's going to be built at some point, and that's going to be a major rail terminus. Sorry, a major freight terminus, should we say?
Right. Okay. Actually, I think someone from Adjoining Village had seen plans for a new freight hub recently. It could have been that, I'm not sure. But I don't know any details of that, no. But
might be worth looking at.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Just to let you know, what one item that Cambridge Approaches is doing is contacting people in central Cambridge, the Mill Road area, where there's a strong potential if they take the southern route, there's and they have nighttime freight, which if they're going to have 20 trains a day, which is expected, some of that is going to be at night. I don't think the people from central Cambridge would be very happy. So we are getting in contact with local representatives in Cambridge to join us in a call for an equal review of the northern approach versus the southern approach on the same basis. So just to let you know. Any other questions?
Yes, please. If you can see me on the video.
Yes, hello.
Hi. Yeah, just a few questions more around, I guess, kind of the process and Cambridge Approaches itself and the interplay between the parish councils. So I just wondered, question number 1, has the parish council effectively delegated authority to you as a group to speak to EWR on their behalf?
In terms of Haslingfield, I can only answer in terms of Haslingfield, which I'm a parish councillor. Then They haven't delegated responsibility to speak to EWR on their behalf in total, but for the purpose of our activities, which they've agreed with, they have said that I can speak on their behalf. Yes.
And in terms of this being a little Shelford meeting, I just wonder what authority has been delegated to you as a group to speak to EWR.
David, should I just respond? As far as Great Shelf is concerned, we haven't given the guys authority to speak on our behalf. We've obviously taken part in the discussions and been aware of sharing the information, but we've not actually delegated our authority.
Okay, thanks. As a follow-up question, then, have the routes that affect Great Shelford been presented to EWR by Cambridge Approaches?
Yes, they have.
And following on from that, then, what authority did you have to present those routes to EWR?
We did it on our own behalf, and those of the representatives from the parish councils that joined the meetings. So
we just established Shelford Parish Council didn't delegate that authority.
That they were at the meeting with EWR, so we didn't do it without their presence.
I'm at a meeting too, but I am not delegating authority to you. I'm at this meeting. So anyway, a follow-on question. What view does EWR have of Cambridge Approaches? How do they treat you as an organisation?
They give us little information. They and they take time in giving us that information. They treat us fairly respectfully, I suppose, but or politely, I should say. Yes.
Do they view you as speaking for the areas that you're presenting routes for?
We don't consider ourselves speaking for those areas. We consider ourselves as presenting the views of the representatives from the parish councils that attended the meetings, and that's all. We're not saying that we've got a public mandate to speak on behalf of the area at all. We don't.
But just to be clear, you presented a number of routes on your previous slide.
Yep.
Our parish councillor said that none of those are acceptable. He said that you don't speak for the parish. He hasn't delegated authority for you to speak to EWR on those routes, but you've also said you have presented those routes to EWR.
We've presented the routes to EWR on the basis of discussions with the representatives of the parish councils.
That isn't the same thing as saying they allowed you to present those routes through delegated authority. That's just you had a discussion and then you presented them.
Yes, with their agreement that they were at the meeting where we presented them.
And you've got minutes of where this was agreed that you can forward to this group.
There was a sequence.
I'm sorry. Sorry, go on, William.
There was a sequence of about 10 meetings where this was developed, and the parish council reps were there for all of those meetings, and it led up to this presentation of these what we think are representative routes to illustrate the problems in the area to East West Rail and the shared concerns of the representatives of the parish council. So that's what we did.
But all these representations seem to concentrate the fact that the route is going to go through Shelford.
Because
Shelford is an end point defined by East West Rail in the option E area.
Now, the end point is Felixstowe. Let's just get it straight. That can't be right that they've chosen some random village 5 miles outside of Cambridge as an end point to their railway line. That is
no. Sorry. What I was trying to say was within the option E area, and I can show you on the map. It doesn't go further really than Great Shelford area. It doesn't go into Cambridge.
No, but it goes into the proposed
The
South
train line
Cambridge
will
Railway.
go into.
What is the point of having 4 lines of freight going into the hospital South Cambridge new station? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No. I agree with you on that point, totally. And the line itself will obviously continue beyond Great Shelford.
Yes, but into the middle of Cambridge. What is the point? It's going to Felixstowe.
Yeah, it won't stop the freight.
Well, if it's not going to stop there, what's the point of going through there?
I agree with you. I agree with you.
It just doesn't make any sense to route this railway through South Cambridge. I know you're protecting your own in Toft and Hauxton and all that, but you know, we're here to protect Shelford, I guess. So
it's not.
This is not an NIMBY attitude. What I'm trying to say to you is, if you're going to take freight from A to B, the first thing you do is you get a map and you get a ruler and a pencil and you draw a straight line from one to the other. Then you try and go round the obstacles in between. And this is a crazy route round an obstacle, including the middle of Cambridge, which is what, 900-year-old city. And you're going to put 4 lines of freight going through the middle of the city, which has got no reason to be going there whatsoever.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm not saying you are. What I'm saying is the route is such. And we should
and Cambridge Approaches is agreeing with you.
To get it outside Cambridge, full stop.
Yes, I would agree with you that we should get freight outside Cambridge.
Well, but the route, you know, your proposed route or whatever it might have been, right, doesn't say that. I mean,
no.
Walk a few stages and say, this is crazy. Go outside Cambridge, go around. There's plenty of routes outside Cambridge, south of Milton and along the A14, as I say, which wouldn't upset anybody.
So maybe what we should do is to petition for a fair assessment of different approaches into Cambridge from the north and the south, because it hasn't happened.
I would say past Cambridge rather than into. That makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, sure, and I think that the reason why it appears that the routes that we've developed are, I would say, victimizing Great Shelford it's because if you look in the option E decision, what East West Rail have said is that option E means that the East West Railway will join the existing railway line at or near the Shepworth Branch Junction, which is just north of Great Shelford. So that's a kind of constraint that they've given. That's part of the option E definition. So what David's done is to take that constraint and say, okay, well, if that's happening, how can I possibly get from Camborne to Shepworth Branch Junction?
Yeah, was there not a route on one of your maps that goes more towards Ely? If you look at the line, I thought I don't have it in my head because I just saw your map, but it goes north of the city and goes. And if you look at the line through, past from the west side of the city, you're pointing towards Newmarket and the rail line that goes up to Ely and whatever. Why can't it go that way and link up on that?
That is one
Newmarket line. I mean, it makes more sense.
That is one northern approach line. Yes, option. Absolutely.
Well, then in which case, why are you pressing the southern route more, or what seems to be more than a northern route?
We're not pressing the northern. We're not pressing the southern route at all. We took initially Cambridge Approaches took the premise that East West Rail had decided that it would be a southern approach. Okay, we took that as a premise because they said that's what it was going to be. They'd gone past the stage of consultation on that.
But that's where the argument has got to start then.
Absolutely, yes. So that's why Cambridge.
But with due respect, and I don't want to hog the conversation anymore.
Right.
With due respect, when you've given this presentation tonight, all I've heard is that you're looking at North Camborne because you're going to avoid Camborne and there's more development. And after that, it's coming round through the south. I mean, that's all I've heard all tonight. Nothing at all about how are we going to attack the problem from going around the north side, which is really where it's got to be. I mean, it seems to me you've already accepted this southerly route.
Well, we've told you many times.
Well, we haven't at all. That is totally incorrect. I'm afraid to say, we have.
That's
What we're
the
asking for. Initially, Cambridge Approaches looked at a southern approach because that's what East West Rail told us they were going to do. We tried to find the least worst option. But since then, Cambridge Approaches view has developed, and we're now approaching it from the point of view of, let's look at a northern approach and a southern approach on the same level playing field.
Okay.
Let's have a discussion about it. So
Okay. That's a start. Okay, thank you.
So David, sorry, how receptive to the so it's pretty clear EWR want to go option E. You've presented a new northern route, which I guess probably most people on this Zoom would be in preference of. How seriously are they assessing that option?
they, at the moment, I don't know that they're assessing it at all. I don't believe that they are, but
Right.
I've no knowledge of exactly what they're doing.
Okay, so how do we on this call that would be in favour of that northern option, how do we try to influence EWR to consider that option?
Excellent question. And my own view is through politicians. Political pressure on EWR to look at a northern option into Cambridge and a freight route that bypasses Cambridge.
And so next question, please can you share with everybody on this Zoom what you would advise to affect that political pressure?
Yeah. Please have a look at our website. We'll give you more information on our activities, but there's suggestions on letters that you can write to the MPs. As I say, Cambridge Approaches is discussing with central Cambridge politicians how to get EWR to change their minds and give us to look at a northern approach as well.
What I would suggest also,
there are other Cambridge politicians in favour of the rail not going through their city.
we're trying to find out.
Yeah, we've just approached them. I don't think they'd be very happy about freight at night going through the city.
So
could I try to clarify a point there? Because as a passenger railway, Cambridge is clearly a vital a vital point on the line, and I think you muddy the waters a bit there. The route of East West Rail will have to include the central station in Cambridge and probably Cambridge South station. And I would say to Cambridge Approaches that for me, actually, you weaken your case a bit, if you don't mind me saying, when you make these rather sarcastic remarks about scientists commuting from Oxford to Cambridge.
But,
I mean,
that was the main reason that they quoted. I've read.
Yeah, can I just finish my point? Can I finish my point? East West Rail will make possible a whole load of journeys like Norwich to Milton Keynes, Bedford to Swindon, and so on, which at the moment are difficult to make by any mode of transport. I mean, I will say in front of this forum, I would like to see East-West Rail built. I'm not entering into controversy about the local routing, but as an overall project, I believe it is a good project. If the demand was not there, why are the A428 and the A421 always congested? There is a demand for travel along that axis, and I don't think Cambridge Approaches should challenge the whole concept of East-West Rail. It's perfectly valid to challenge the local routing. It's perfectly valid to challenge the freight routing that doesn't have to be the same as the passenger routing.
Well,
It's the
we are
falling
challenging East West Rail to
of
justify
freight
the
that I'm
business case.
largely concerned with. So, yeah.
Okay, could I ask William to respond on that point?
Yeah, so I'm just saying that we are challenging them to justify their business case because, you know, as the previous gentleman said, then what they're saying at the moment is not massively credible, and there are lots of other things they could say, but they haven't said them yet, and we just think that it's their proposal and they need to justify it. And at the moment, the business case is not great. I think going back to the previous question on, you know, what can you do in Great Shelford to influence this? I want to give you a case study of what the Eversdens have done to try and influence this, because they're in a similar position. They have got together as a group. They have done a leafleting campaign of their own, you know, just residents. They have sought volunteers. I think they got 30 volunteers in a village of 320 houses. They have, you know, they have just formed their own campaign. They're working with us, but you know, they're their own group. They are organising writing letters. They are organising a Twitter campaign. They are, you know, being very, very active. They've got, if you go to Little Eversden now, you're going to see signs up saying what their view is, just to generate awareness. So I think that my advice to the people in Great Shelford that are and other villages that are very concerned about this is just get organised. I mean, we're happy to help you, but we can't do everything. There's just a few of us.
Well,
Yeah. This is Tracy again. I think those are great suggestions. Also, can I ask Malcolm, what plans does the parish council have, the Great Shelford Parish Council have in terms of fighting this?
Well, we were initially going to wait until the route was announced in sort of January time, but I think certainly the opinion and my inbox has been getting fuller and fuller with comments about the East West Rail. So I think we need to discuss it as a council and come up with a plan to get, as William says, get people involved locally to see how we can do it. Can we put you down, Tracy?
Pardon? Oh,
can I
absolutely.
put you down?
Absolutely. Waiting for a route. And I've got two parish councillors living adjacent to me, by the way, one next door and one right behind me. Waiting for a route is too late. By the time they've put out a route for proposal, it's too late. We need to influence them before they put out a suggested route.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, David, there's sorry, I've been monitoring I've been monitoring the chat. There's a nice comment on there from a Joanna, I think, that needs addressing about Route 6A. And I think the answer to the question is it doesn't go through the rugby club. The northern route just goes through the north of Cambridge and down, but I'll let you answer it.
I can't. There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I can. So the question is, just for clarity, does the north option also include option 6A, which still come very close to the rugby field?
The north option proposed by CBRR does not impact Great Shelford.
Correct. Yeah.
So just to be clear,
there are two options though. So the North Cambourne option, which is alternative 6 and 6A, that would impact Great Shelford. Do you want me to get the drawing up? So
yeah.
Let's see. Is it possible to share the screen, or not share it, but show the? Back. Okay, back. Forward 1, I think. Right. Okay. So you can see here the option E area to the south. The CBRR route is shown going through the north of Cambourne and then going through Northstowe. So it's picking up the housing areas, the development projected development areas, and then coming in to Cambridge North from the Milton area.
So David, sorry for clarity, is that the yellow line or the orange line?
Sorry, I'm colorblind. It's the one with little hatches on it.
Yeah, it's the yellow line to the north. Camborne, Northstowe,
Yes.
comes in round the top. Right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But can we just go on a few slides, because there was a slide showing the option 6A approaching from the north.
So if you go backwards, William, we can come to it. Right there. Right. So from on the top left-hand corner, Camborne, station somewhere in North Camborne, the alternative 6 and 6A, as I said, come down to the east of Hardwick, to the rifle range near Barton, and then 6 skirts the motorway. Or is it 6?
6A skirts the motorway.
And 6 diverts round the wildlife reserve, but they both end up crossing the 1301 in Great Shelford. Where they'll cross it, I don't know.
But it looks like it's very close to the rugby club or thereabouts.
Absolutely.
It is shown there because it's a likely, it's a possible route. It's representative.
David, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Why
sure.
on earth? Why on earth? So you can see 6A and 6 link up pretty much where it crosses the motorway. Okay, I get that, and it plows through the rugby club. It plows through Scottsdale's, somewhere around there, and it comes up and joins the line north of what you're calling the Shepworth Junction. Okay, which confused me earlier, because in my mind it would be called the Shelford Junction, but the Shepworth Junction,
just the way it's.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Shepworth Junction is clearly where it splits. I get that. Why on earth? Why do EWR not believe it's more sensible to join the which I think is the Liverpool Street line? I may be wrong. It's probably the
King's Cross line?
It's the King's Cross line. Why does it not join the King's Cross line, somewhere where no houses are impacted, and then come up through the normal line? What's the problem with that?
Right. Okay. If it to actually join the King's Cross line, you'd have to impact some houses in Hauxton. You'd also have to impact some.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but you've got to impact houses in Shelford. I mean,
so there's the approach to the line. I think you would get close to some houses in Hauxton, and then the capacity of the King's Cross line is, I think, insufficient to cater for East West Rail. They are saying that they're trying to, they're doing some more work on that to see if the existing line is sufficient without dualling it. But
David, sorry. Can I appreciate you might be colorblind, but where the two shaded areas cross, 6 and 6A, is where it crosses the motorway.
Yep.
If you go southeast from there to the current railway line, you impact 0 houses. There's none. I walk my dog there all the time. You impact no houses.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You can then pick up the King's Cross line and go up.
Okay. The issue on that is whether you need to widen the existing
track
line to take the additional traffic from East West Rail. I think you do. If you don't, that's great for Shelford. Absolutely fantastic. But if you do, it'll impact houses on that curve just south of Shepworth Junction.
Because you've got to widen it. Is that right?
Can we speak up? I myself and
others in this call, I can see Jennifer and Mark, we are just living in the thick of it in Aberley Wood, in that wedge between the leg going to King's Cross and to Liverpool Street. So you can imagine how we feel, right?
Yes.
And there are other neighbors of ours where really their back garden is next to that rail. And actually, I want to bring up another observation which hasn't been discussed yet. There is this South Cambridge project coming to happen, yeah, in the next 5 years, while the East-West Rail are consulting. And already they have told us that they are planning to do 4 tracks for approaching that South Cambridge. So we asked them explicitly if that sort of is an excuse for the EDWR to extend and make, you know, widen the tracks of that King's Cross behind those gardens. And actually almost eluding the fact that probably this will take over and demolish houses in Davy Crescent, you know, there can be in danger on that. So there's always an impact. That's what we are saying. Every route you can say, there's no way of saying none would be impacted. If it goes through Great Shelford, any of us could have some impact. So we need to recognize. And final thing I want to say is that perhaps take into consideration how we can link up the South Cambridge developments because of what they are trying to do there. And if that gives them a kind of an excuse for EDWR to say, okay, that's the route to go, plus a coordination between CBRR and yourselves guys, that would be appreciated in order to avert this kind of situation. Thank you.
Can you tell me which, you talk about development in South Cambridge? Which ones were you thinking of?
When I say develop, South Cambridge Station.
The station at South Cambridge.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because we are consulting again, because that would, the first thing we know is that what we'll start doing behind our gardens already is that they will have to change the banking because they plan to increase the speed from 30 miles to 50 miles, which again, it's absurd because we asked them, why would you like a train approaching the station to speed up? Why is that so? And then we also challenge that project in terms of also, I mean, like Jim said, all these things in the long run could have a positive impact to all of us. It's the process that will be painful, absolutely. So we need to reconcile all that. We all are aware of that, but there are some considerations also on whether COVID, for instance, and the fact that all of us now we work from home, would that justify the numbers for all these projects to happen?
Absolutely, yeah. In terms of South Cambridge station, the curve itself, south of Shepworth Junction, they're not proposing to widen that. They're not proposing to 4-track that.
Absolutely. We challenged them, and from their point of view, they confirmed in writing that this not going to happen. But obviously, then it always makes you paranoid that thinking how these two things link together. What does it mean? That's absolutely, you know, we don't need to get into the trap of becoming paranoid. But I'm just laying some facts we have come across because we are really in the thick of all these projects in our area here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've just seen a comment. To the comments.
Is it possible just for me to just finish the kind of line of questioning I had, David? Really, I guess my
about a mandate.
Well, yeah. My kind of, I mean, you know, to put it out there, probably my guess is it's going to go past my house, and I'm actually kind of okay with that. I also agree with Jim. I don't really want the project to be cancelled or to try and lobby that it's not going to happen. I think that's shouting into the wind. I think really the only chance we've got is to argue around the margins, and it's the best place to do. Yeah, and it's probably the only thing we can do. The point I was trying to make was that to make sure that that discussion is really representing the views of the people that are going to be impacted. And if these lines are being drawn on bits of paper without consultation, despite, I'm not saying you don't have good intentions. I'm not querying any of that. The point I'm querying is, it doesn't sound to me like the parish council or the council or the politicians are joined up on this with you guys, and you are presenting things to EWR, and EWR could view that as a kind of considered group view when clearly it isn't. And I think that's the most important thing to fix, that if people are drawing lines on maps that impact people's houses, then the people that you're showing that to need to be very, very clear that you are not representing them. That it's just your view from a further, a village further away. And I think it's more an issue for Shelford Parish Council and any other elected officials, that they need to get a grip on this. So I'm sorry, Malcolm, to kind of slightly throw you under the bus on this, but if you're allowing Cambridge approaches to represent you, and you clearly said that you weren't allowing them to, but they are, then I think you need to get a grip on that pretty quickly. And obviously they're going to be, most of the people on here, I guess, know about it from the surveys, like myself, because they want to come and survey my field. I'm on Newton Road, and I know some other landowners have contacted me and said they're also surveying the fields. My view is it's coming this way for whatever it's worth. I'm frankly I'm okay with that, because you can't kind of stop progress. My point, long-winded point, is it needs to be joined up. And you as the parish council need to be certain that people that are sitting in front of EWR represent the people in this parish.
Sorry, may I make one more point, because I think people are mixing up transport for passengers and freight. That's my big deal, is the freight, right? Or I don't dispute the arguments that the last two gentlemen are making for passenger transport. But South Cambridge to the middle of Cambridge to the north of Cambridge will be a fixed line. So there's no difference really for passengers who want to go, for instance, from South Cambridge to the hospital side off to Oxford or wherever they might want to go, Felixstowe if necessary. They could still do the short line which commutes across the city. My problem is largely based on the freight, which just does not need to go through any of this. With the map that was shown just a few minutes ago, you could see the route. It was just a big U coming in from the west side, looping right down to the south, right up through the city to the north, and then turning right again to go east. It just doesn't make sense to me. That is the thing that I am objecting to. I'm not.
I agree with your point.
I'm not objecting to progress. Okay, for passing.
The last point, was it Andrew Rossiter who made the last point about the mandate of Cambridge approaches?
Well, I was the one speaking.
And Andrew, right? Yes. Okay. How can I explain this? I put representative routes, what I considered personally representative routes, in front of representatives from the parish councils. I wasn't proposing that they, in fact, on the maps themselves, that they say that East West Rail are likely to choose other routes. So they're not, the fact that parish councils representatives were there, they're not endorsing those routes. We're not endorsing those routes. East West Rail knew we weren't saying that, yeah, just go there, it's no problem for anyone. No one was that naive at all. They're just representative routes to get people's attention, that the consequences, the impact on their parishes.
I understand that completely, and I wasn't kind of disputing that. What I was saying was that routes are being put on paperwork and being presented to EWR without consultation of the wider group. Now that's fine in your area, but you're drawing routes, as other people have said, through their houses, and the first they're hearing about it is in a meeting like this. So my point was really that the parish council do not appear to have given you any right or ability or whatever, or mandate, whatever we call it, to even put routes on a piece of paper and then present these as things that we are discussing, because they're not being discussed.
That they were, so it was an agreement between ourselves and the parish councils that we would propose these, that we would put the conclusions of our findings to East West Rail. And the main conclusion of our findings, that there was no option within, no alternative within option E that was satisfactory.
But they're going to know that. They will know that they put option E, and someone is going to be annoyed. I'm just a bit flabbergasted that 3 routes that the parish council immediately said we don't like those routes, were still presented to EWR as routes that we don't like. That's the bit I'm not understanding, and it wasn't consulted. Yet they didn't consult.
But the kind of premise of, I think you know, we have said, we've said quite a lot over and over again, and to the point that was made earlier about why you would take freight traffic through Cambridge. What I don't understand about why East West Trains doesn't seem to be looking at the northern route is because we can't have separate railways. So we have to have freight and passengers using the same track, presumably. So given the amount of freight that's going to go through, I can't understand the logic of the northern route not being on the table. And the second point about that is that when you looked at that map, as far as I could see, it literally, I think somebody else made this point, doesn't cross any property. Now, I don't know what the projections are 5-10 years hence, because obviously property maybe is going to, I mean, North Stowe is set to expand, isn't it? So I'm not quite sure what the projections are there. But it's a clear line. So I just find the logic really difficult. I know we're at a stage now where decisions have already been made, but it's not really acceptable to not consider a viable option. I know you agree with this, so I'm kind of stating the obvious, but I'm still at a loss as to understand how they're thinking, you know, how it works really.
I think, can I just jump in on that one? So I think what I tried to explain was it's a question of there's lots of different parts of government and they've all been given different responsibilities. And so the thing that Chris Grayling, who was Transport Minister at the time, asked the East West Rail Company to do, which was kind of set up for the purpose, was to build a railway from Bedford to Cambridge and to operate a passenger service on it. But he also, we understand, Chris Grayling told them to not really worry about speaking to anybody else, but just get it done quickly, because they would get held up by all the local government authorities, and they just wanted to get it done. And so that kind of created the culture in East West Rail. So they just blinkered, they want to get it done, and and then there's a separate activity of thinking about freight, which has sort of spawned in the eastern section and Suffolk County Council and Felixstowe, and that's being studied by a different group of people. It's actually Steer Consulting, and you know it doesn't make sense if you look at it from 50,000 feet, but it does make sense if you think about the people that are doing the work and what they've been paid to do. They are doing their job. It's just the jobs they've been given don't join up, So we are flagging that, and that I've been trying to go through all the disconnects. That's one of them. That's one of the big ones. I also want to come back to, I think there's a lot of passion on this call, which I think is great. I think that if there are people that want to influence this, don't underestimate the opinion of even a small number of people. And I think that I recommend again, try and get together and get organised. I mean, if Cambridge Approaches can help you do that, then, you know, for example, if you wanted to email into us and say, you know, I want to join a Great Shelford group, we can put you in touch with each other. You know, whatever helps. But I do recommend that you try and do that.
So just on that, so just probably back to Andrew's point, Malcolm, this responsibility probably lies with you, to, you know, garner the collective passion of lots of people on this call, to represent us in the way that we want to be represented. And I guess, you know, there's probably some disappointment from a lot of people on this call that this is the first they've heard of these routes and these plans and these representations. But I think the onus is on you to, you know, garner the collective passion of everybody on this call to, you know, lobby EWR in the way that we want to be represented. And yes, someone else has just literally commented, other villages have very active residents groups, and I don't feel we do.
No, and perhaps, you know, we've been a bit behind the curve on this, and you know, but after listening to everybody's views tonight, obviously it's something we need to take on board and do something about.
Could I ask the gentleman from Cambridge Approaches? I'm sorry, I don't know your name, sir. You gave the second talk, I think.
William.
You're the only person from who knows all the emails of the whole group that you've had tonight, because we all registered with you. Are you able to share that, or in some way allow us to have a message out to everybody via you? I mean, I don't know what GDPR regulations you're stuck under, but
I think that's GDPR is the problem. So what I would suggest as an offer, if people that are interested in joining a Great Shelford group that are on this call want to email info@cambridgeapproaches.org and indicate that they're happy for their name to be shared with other parties, then we can take those emails and send it back out to all of you, and then to introduce you all. So there's an offer there if you want to take it up, or you can work via your parish council. So it's up to you, but the offer from me is there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, or Matt,
10. So if there's anything urgent.
So Malcolm, what about a parish council email address? Is there one?
Yeah. We've all the councils have got parish council emails. If you look on our website, Mark, look on the parish council website.
Okay.
Great Shelford Parish Council. Have a look on there.
So Malcolm, what Everston's did, I think it was Matt Prince, he organised a newsletter to go around to, this was actually in the last few weeks, to every resident of the Eversdons, saying, and it was powerful because it was local, saying, you know, this is what's happening, and if anyone's interested in, you know, joining a local group, then, you know, please get in contact to this email address. And they have 320 houses, and 10% of the houses volunteered, and they were on a call. And there's still, I think, 18 of them still going. And, you know, we are helping them we are helping them do it. You know, we are not Haslingfield NIMBYs. We want to energize the whole area if we can.
Right across the board.
So, you know, but that's what they did. It came from the local parish council. It was extremely successful. So I recommend that.
It needs to come from the parish council. A lot of people don't take it on board when it doesn't come from the parish council. We found that even here in Haslingfield, people haven't believed it until it's come from the parish council.
Okay.
So hang on, David, there's something from Joanna. Yes, EWR are choosing routes within Option E, which will be published in January. Is that true?
Yes, that is what we understand them doing. Yes.
Okay. So we don't have very long then.
Absolutely.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
EW are in a position of being late, so it all is not lost.
But
I can't say I'm overjoyed that, you know, with 4 weeks to go to a decision, that the communication has really just come out from the parish council.
So are you saying,
to be fair,
having
we
chosen
did,
the route, that is it? I mean, with no consultation with the villagers or anything, no further conversation.
So there's a non-statutory consultation due early in next year. After that, they will look at the responses and the to the consultation, and they will choose a route. This is assuming that they don't get any political pressure. After they choose the route, they will work it up, and they will have a statutory consultation on that route. And there might be a few little tweaks to it in terms of tens of meters, but that's it. So after that point, it'll be set in stone. But yeah, so there's not long. As William said, it could well be longer than 6 to 8 weeks. It could be longer than that. It might not be though.
So Dave,
you need to. We need jointly to get political pressure on East West Rail to look at a northern route.
So David, if I was running Shelford Rugby Club today, which I don't, but I live very close to it, what would you say to all the Shelford Rugby Club managers, directors, parents? What would you say?
What do I say? I would say get in touch with East West Rail and your local politicians.
Okay.
Voice your concern. That there might be a route that.
I bet they're delighted about the warning and that they've had.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the route I want to take. I don't really want 1,000 people because we've got over 1,000 members. I really don't want them all heading off in different directions. I'd like to provide a bit more guidance, to be honest. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be as influential as possible, but I think we need it a bit more concerted than everyone heading off.
Agreed.
We need Shelford Parish Council to take the lead here, don't we? Deliver on their leadership. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened there. Sorry, it's Andrew Harper here. I think I must have crossed or got across communication. All I want to say is, having listened diligently for the last couple of hours, is quite clearly we need Shelford Parish Council to take control of this situation as representatives. We need Shelford Parish Council to organise a meeting most urgently with the local residents, particularly those that are impacted by this. And we also need Shelford Parish Council, in conjunction with the other PCs and the CA, to arrange a meeting with EWR as soon as is practicable. That's really what the outcome of this is, isn't it? CA should be applauded for what they've done. But ultimately, Shelford Parish Council, I'm going to be really blunt and candid here, as far as I can see from what I have listened to, if that's the correct way of saying it, is you've virtually done nothing. There are people here that could lose their houses. There are people here that could have their houses knocked down. They know nothing about anything. The people that have shown passion this evening and vented and been very angry, they have every right to be angry and cross and frustrated because they could lose their homes. So I think it's incumbent upon Shelford Parish Council to actually do something, and as an absolute minimum, as their elected representatives, do those two things. I think that's what should happen. Thank you.
Yeah, well said.
I completely agree. This is Tracy. I absolutely agree that those are the actions going forward. That's what we've got to do. One last question from me. What does Scottsdale's know about this, and have they given any feedback?
I'm not aware of any information from Scottsdale, any views from Scottsdale. I don't know what they know and what they don't know. No.
Okay.
I expect they're like us. We all don't know anything about it.
As far as I'm aware, and I think someone from the club talked to Ben, Scottsdale's are unaware.
So, yeah, Nick, I even texted one of your buddies today who lives on Westfield Road. He's a rugby club member. He knew nothing about it either.
No, I mean, we've not, I've been waiting for this meeting, but, you know, we've not shared it with the general membership yet because it will create panic. You know, we're going through hard enough times as it is as a club. But I'm going to have to, I mean, after this, I'm going to do a summary for our general committee. I'll probably talk to one of our land agents about what we can do, because we've got quite a few land agents who are actually members of the club. And then after that, we'll give a briefing to our membership.
Perhaps you could include the houses that surround you as well, Mr. Denton.
Well, yeah, I could look. I've got no problem with telling people on Westfield Road and that what we're telling our members. That I'm quite happy to share that.
I think David as well, if I may say.
It's almost 10 o'clock now, so unless there's something really urgent, I'd like to call today. Mark, you were just about to say something?
No.
Simon here. I was just saying, Simon, right. The focus of Cambridge approaches now really be to coordinate the parish council's approach to EWR and government, and really focus it that way.
Right, we're concentrating our efforts on influencing the politicians to get an open review on a northern approach versus a southern approach. Right.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking. But with
we have gone
with
through
coordinating all the parish councils as well.
We're not coordinating the parish council's input at the moment. No, that is something that we've done in the past, and we're not proposing.
I mean, I'm not necessarily meaning job, but at least getting the information to a common understanding of how they can take it forward, especially around, as you say, the northern approach, which strikes me as an engineer as being the most obvious.
Yeah.
We did give them an update recently. I think it was, what is it, last week or the week before, and CBRR, we organised for them to give a presentation as well. I just think that parish councils, and it's not just Great Shelford, I think parish councils have limited bandwidth to sort out all these issues. I think that they can be a catalyst and they can help, but I think that the sad truth is that people need to get involved as well. And that, in terms of what's happened in Eversdens, Hauxton, and Haslingfield, and some other places, it's actually been people pushing and doing stuff that's actually made the difference.
That's fine. People are happy to get involved when they know.
Yeah, well, we're trying to help you with that.
Yeah,
and the messenger often gets the blame, but
no one's blaming you. You put the note through the doors. We didn't get anything from the parish council.
It's because we
as far as I'm concerned,
care about the area. That's why we did it.
We leafleted or tried to leaflet 5,000 homes throughout the villages. I did Bourne, Kingston, William and I did Toft.
But you're from Cambridge Approaches, correct?
Yeah.
That's fine. I get that. That was recent, but
that was in August.
That was in the summer.
In the summer.
We tried to do it, and we tried to get it all.
But should we have not had something from the parish council sooner?
Yes.
Well,
okay, that's fine. Thank you.
You've got to start from where you are, I think, is the problem. You've got to kind of get out of the anger and the denial and just get into what can I do about it. Malcolm, can I? What do you think are the next steps? What are you going to do as a result of this?
Well, I think can I just first of all say that we did actually, the parish council did actually leaflet the village in late August, September time. So everybody in the village should have got one. If they didn't, I apologise. But I think obviously we need to, as you say, get everybody together and see how we can fight this now. The newsletter sounds a good idea. But obviously, I think I'll be guided by you guys in terms of who we need to approach. Obviously, Anthony, we've spoken to Anthony Brown about it, and he's how his view is, and also the district councillors and county councillors.
Malcolm, what I
This
suggest
is
is
Peter Brown here. I'm Tracy Brown's husband. We have not been leafleted. That is not true.
We know quite a few people in Shelford, and I don't know, I mean, we know loads of people in Shelford, and I do not know a single person that's been leafleted by the council. Not one single person.
I'm sorry, I cannot understand how you could say that.
I would agree with that 100%.
Oh dear, well, I'm sorry.
Road next to the route, effectively.
Malcolm, what I suggest is you have a chat to Matt Prince in the Eversdons and ask what he did, because he did a newsletter or a leaflet from the parish council, and I think there was a call to email into a particular email address, and it was all done in a few days. And then they had an online call, and like I say, they had 10% of the houses in the village volunteered to help. I think you could get the same result here, and they'll organise themselves because they're bright people around here. But you can be a catalyst for that to happen.
Sure.
And Matt's done it, and it's been superbly successful. If they get together, we'll provide information, we'll provide support. We can't do everything, but we can certainly do that.
That's great.
If you want to have a call with us about how to do it as well, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
So David, sorry, William, I think it is.
Yeah.
There's been something just on from Joanna. You've successfully, and take this as it is. You've successfully persuaded the various parish councils to vote for a route which goes through our area, crucially without consulting us first. That seems morally reprehensible. Now, I understand that EWR have chosen Route E. I get that. So how do you respond to that question or that statement?
We, as I said before, we haven't chosen a route through this area. The end point of a EWR's route in this option E area is Shepworth Junction, which is near Great Shelford. All the routes go through Great Shelford in option E. That's it. So it's not.
It's the corridor, isn't it, that's been chosen?
The corridor has been chosen, but the end
Yeah.
point of the corridor is that the alignment would end up at or near Shepworth Junction, which is just north of Great Shelford. So all the routes go to Great Shelford.
So
take the option E area.
So is the statement correct that parish councils have voted for different routes?
That they voted on different routes, yes. But they were the routes that they voted on are representative routes. They're not definitive routes. Okay, I've got to make that distinction. As I said a few times before, they're representative routes of it could be in this area.
But who selected those routes, EWR or Cambridge approaches?
I did. I personally selected those routes as being likely options that EWR would select come the consultation. They did not give us anything at all.
Based on your experience as a railway engineer, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's kind of good news for the rugby club, actually, because it's just a representative idea. It's not come from East West Rail, so it's not set in stone at all. What is set in stone for option E, as part of the question, is it ends at Shepworth Branch Junction, which is why David's ended them all there. It's not victimising Great Shelford. It's just part of the question. If you want to find routes in option E, then they end at Shepworth Branch Junction or at or near.
Can I comment on this leaflet issue? At the end of September, those leaflets were distributed. And whether people say they didn't get them, I know they were distributed.
To who?
Well, I've got a list here in front of me that gives the street and the number of houses leafleted.
Can you share it?
Why should I
Oh,
share it?
I don't know if you can share it, but I would say this is Andrew Harper here from 17 Cabbage Moor, Great Shelford, and I can categorically, absolutely,
Well,
100% tell you that I never got a leaflet.
Yeah,
Absolutely did not.
Likewise.
And I also know that my next door neighbour didn't at the front and to the side.
Yeah,
186 Cambridge Road, we didn't. I also know somebody further in town didn't as well.
I did, and I live in Westfield Road.
Likewise, yeah. And if it wasn't for one lady, I don't know if I want to embarrass her, but it was because of her we got the leaflets and printouts from Cambridge Approach. So we don't need to shoot the messengers. In fact, it was because of you that we start getting this mobilization. So if she wants to speak up, I don't want to expose her, but she did a great job to come around our houses and do that, but only when it was marked, I don't know, it was back in October, something like that. Nothing before, nothing before.
Can I just comment on the rugby club as well? They're commenting on the fact that they might be having a train line through the pitch, but why don't they comment that they are actually trying to sell the pitch to build houses on? And they've not made that public to the locals of Great Westfield.
Barry, can I just correct you? We're not trying to sell the land.
You've put in as a site to be developed.
No, we're applying to go on the local plan. That's not the same thing.
Yes, but you haven't asked the people around you, do we like that, have you?
I don't have to.
No, you don't. But you're being so pious about a rail line and how nobody's told you, but you've not told anybody that you're putting a plan in to build houses.
I've not heard anyone be pious about a rail line, and development of property is not equivalent to running a rail line through a village.
Well, that's your view.
Wow. Okay.
So Barry, you sorry, Barry, are you a parish councillor?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Just
That
asking.
sums it up, doesn't it?
Right. Could I call it a night there, because it's past 10 o'clock. So as William has suggested before, and I think Malcolm has acknowledged, that it will set up get in touch with the Eversdens to look at what they've done and take it from there. Perhaps set up something in Great Shelford to mobilise and take it forward, not looking back.
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean, I think we can do a both and actually. I mean, we're happy to help Malcolm. I think if people from Great Shelford want to be introduced, just if you send us an email on info@Cambridge Approaches, indicate that you're happy to be introduced to other people, then we can bat it out to whoever sends it to us. We can do that and also do the parish council route. So I think it's a both and situation.
Sure.
And happy to help you, Malcolm.
Thanks, William. Thanks, David.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much indeed. Good night.
Yeah.
Recorded so they can play it back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll be on the website as well, so people can see what we presented.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for organising that, Cambridge Approaches. Thank you.
That's a pleasure.
All the best.